It's 2021, the iPhone 13 just released with Apple's cinematic event, and we're seeing leaks of phones such as the Google Pixel 6, the Samsung Galaxy S22. Maybe you're excited for these flagship phones, or maybe you're excited for phones that give you value for money, such as the Xiaomi, Poco, or Redmi. Let's see the Poco X3 Pro. For just 12,990 pesos, you get 120Hz refresh rate. Compare that to the iPhone 13 Pro with ProMotion for 63,990 pesos. Maybe you're like me. I'm using a phone that released back a couple years ago, and we're starting to feel that phone is getting outdated. Well, first, let's talk to someone who recently upgraded his phone. Hey Nathan, so why did you upgrade your phone?
First, I upgraded my phone because my old phone was broken. It had a broken camera. It didn't vibrate when I had notifications. It had a lot of dents in it. I also upgraded my phone because it was already an old generation. It was the 6S Plus, even though John also has that. I also upgraded my phone because I really like the look of the iPhone 12. I like its flat edges compared to the iPhone 11. And I really wanted a nice camera for my next phone.
You might be in the same boat. You got an old phone and you just want to say goodbye. Or you might actually come from a newer phone and you just want that latest and greatest. Sometimes we feel that need to have the latest phone, and somewhere we'll hear people talking about upgrading their phones even just after upgrading it the past year. This is actually really common in the tech space, but we have to remember that people in this tech space are people who are really into tech. And I think majority of people wouldn't really be into tech like these people are, and these people only represent a small number of people. So let's take MKBHD for example. MKBHD may have 14 million subs, but that's still just 0.2% of the world's population. The truth is, majority of people don't upgrade their phones every year. I think most people would upgrade their phones from around every 2 to 5 years. But you know, this is SusTech, so we need to ask, is it a good idea to buy a new phone every year? If you haven't yet, click subscribe below to receive our latest videos. Is it a good idea to buy a new phone every year? Well, let's check that sustainability perspective. To be sustainable, our target should be to bring our carbon footprint actually to zero. And that's almost impossible to achieve in the world that we live in today. But the least that we can do is to avoid temperatures from going too high. And we can do that by reducing our carbon footprint. This is the carbon footprint of the iPhone 13, and if you take a look at the bigger picture, this is the carbon footprint of the average Filipino in a year. So if you were to buy an iPhone 13 every year, that would be roughly 5% of our yearly carbon footprint. It may not seem that big, but for a single purchase, it's quite significant. Now, let's look at how long phones last. But first, I want to read a comment on an iPhone 13 review. This person said, "Definitely not worth the upgrade if you have the iPhone 12 or even the 11. The September event was so disappointing." We see comments like this here and there. "Oh, I'll wait until this amazing feature comes before I upgrade my phone." Or, "It's just the same phone as last year." And there is truth to it, but it comes from the expectation that the upgrades on phones for this new year is supposed to be much better compared to the last year. And in the past, upgrades on phones coming out on the next year were actually more significant. But the thing is, today is different. We can't keep that same expectation we had in the past. And why is that? Because the phone market is maturing. First, phone cameras are already getting so good for the average user that we may be reaching the limit of how good phone cameras may actually be. Second is the process and graphics performance. We're getting to a point where it's hard to differentiate the performance of a phone last year compared to the phone this year in terms of practical use. And third are in the screens. So we have the OLED, which has true blacks in terms of color. We have high refresh rates, and we'll see a jump from 60 Hz to 120 Hz in terms of the smoothness of the screen. But what if we go above 120 Hz? Will our eyes still be able to notice that increase in refresh rate? In fact, most don't need to buy a flagship phone anymore to experience these kinds of features. Many mid-range phones, just like earlier, such as the Poco X3 Pro, have features like this. I do think that there's still one thing that phones can still significantly improve on, and that's the battery life. And battery life has gotten better year after year, but how long do you think until we never have to worry about battery life? Comment it down below. For majority of people, it's a big decision to buy a new phone because a phone ain't cheap, and most of the time it doesn't hurt to delay it. Because the question then becomes, is there a better place my money can go to rather than buying a new phone? Then who knows, the time that you actually buy a new phone, it will be really exciting because those few improvements that came each year suddenly becomes a lot when it accumulates over time. Hey, I understand what you're saying, but I just can't help get the latest and greatest. You might be like this guy. You realize you're someone who can't stop buying a phone year after year after year. Okay, so let's go to one of the basic principles of sustainability. So that's reduce, reuse, recycle. Since you're buying a new phone every year, I guess you can't reduce then, but you could work on reuse. How? Well, you could either sell your phone or give it to someone who plans to replace their phone. Okay, but how does that help the environment then? It means that the person who's getting your previous phone no longer needs to buy a new phone, somehow reducing the number of phones that are being bought, and thus reducing the carbon footprint. In SusTech, we love the environment. But have you ever encountered someone who's like, I love the earth so much, I'll never buy a new phone? Let's say that person was using an iPhone 3G since 2008. It might take a minute to load a webpage since it doesn't have 4G or LTE. It might be able to take photos, but far from the quality of today's phones. The key here is knowing what's important for you in a phone. Maybe you use it to browse the web or to use apps that need the internet, but since your phone's so slow, you're slowly losing precious time of your life. It may be seconds or minutes over a day, but over a year it could become hours and even days. Maybe you use it to capture important memories with your family or your friends. In that case, it would be best to have a phone that can at least take decent photos or video if you prefer video. If you go by that, most people should upgrade their phones after some time, maybe a few years or after a couple of years. But what do you think? If you could put a number on how many years before someone should upgrade their phone, what would it be? Let's say I had a friend. Ew, why are you using a phone from 2015? Hey man, I just really care about the environment, you know? The question is, should I upgrade my phone? In a lens of sustainability, it's not ideal to buy a phone often. And if your phone is doing what you need it to do well, then it's best not to buy a new phone. But let's say you have a phone that has a 1 hour battery life. It has a cracked screen and has been really slow. Generally, if your phone is not doing what's important for you, such as taking great photos with your family or friends for your memories, then I think it's the right time to buy a new phone. To sum it up, choosing to upgrade a phone is a lot like life. It's like a balancing act of different priorities. So how about you? What makes you upgrade your phone? Comment it down below. Thumbs up if you love this one, subscribe, and see you in the next one.